My name is Dorothy, and I never thought I would be telling this story. I was just an ordinary woman, going about my life, working hard, taking care of my family, and making sure everything was in order. My life was like that of millions of others, filled with responsibilities, small joys, occasional struggles, and moments of gratitude. I had faith in God, but I never imagined that one day, I would find myself in His presence in a way I could never have anticipated. But everything changed on October 3, 2023. That was the day I died. At least, for a few minutes. Death was not something I had feared or thought much about. Like most people, I knew it would come eventually, but it always seemed distant, something that happened to others, not to me. I assumed I had time. I assumed life would follow its predictable course. But in those brief moments when my heart stopped beating, I saw something beyond this world. Something so profound, so real, that even now, it shakes me to my core. I met Jesus. There are no words to fully capture what I experienced in His presence. The love, the peace, the overwhelming truth that He carried, it was unlike anything I had ever known. Yet, there was also sorrow in His eyes. A deep, indescribable sorrow that made my soul tremble. And then He showed me. He revealed to me the deception that was unfolding in the world, the spiritual battle that so many were blind to. I saw the way humanity was being misled, divided, and manipulated, especially when it came to race and identity. The forces at work were more powerful and more insidious than I had ever imagined. What I learned in those moments changed me forever. And now, I must share it. Because the truth cannot wait. That morning, everything felt normal. The sun peeked through my bedroom window, casting soft golden hues across my walls. The air was crisp, carrying the gentle whisper of a new day. I stretched, feeling the familiar stiffness in my muscles, and whispered my usual prayer, "Thank you, Lord, for another day." It was a simple prayer, a habit I had formed over the years. I never truly realized how much those small moments of gratitude meant, until later, when everything changed. I climbed out of bed, my feet touching the cool wooden floor. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional chirp of birds outside. I made my way to the kitchen, where the rich aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, blending with the comforting scent of toasted bread. This was my routine, coffee first, then breakfast, then off to work. It was predictable, familiar, something I never questioned. As I sipped my coffee, I glanced at the small framed photo on the counter, my mother's smiling face looking back at me. She had passed away 5 years earlier, but I still spoke to her sometimes, telling her about my day, about life. I let out a sigh, thinking about how much I missed her, then shook off the emotion and focused on getting ready. I worked as a caregiver at a senior living facility, and it wasn't just a job to me, it was a calling. The elderly had a way of grounding you, of reminding you what truly mattered in life. Their stories, their wisdom, their laughter, it made my work meaningful. That morning, I made my usual rounds. I checked in on Mrs. Johnson, a feisty woman in her late 80s who always had a story to share. Back in my day, she began, as she often did, her eyes lighting up with nostalgia. I smiled, listening as she recounted her youth, dances under the moonlight, love letters exchanged in secret, a world that seemed so far from today. Then there was Mr. Ray, a man of few words but an endless supply of old gospel hymns. He hummed softly as he rocked in his chair, his voice carrying the weight of years spent in faith. "Precious Lord, take my hand," he sang, his voice slightly cracked with age, yet steady and unwavering. I paused for a moment, just listening. There was something peaceful about that song, about the way he sang it as if he knew something the rest of us didn't. Everything about that day felt normal. Peaceful, even. I had no idea that within a few hours, my life would change forever. By evening, exhaustion weighed heavily on my body. My shift had ended, and all I wanted was to go home, to sink into the comfort of my couch, to kick off my shoes, and to let the weight of the day melt away. The hours spent caring for others had left me drained, but there was also a quiet satisfaction in knowing I had done something meaningful. My phone buzzed in my pocket just as I was clocking out. I pulled it out and saw my son's name flashing on the screen. Smiling, I answered. "Hey, baby," I said, already knowing what he was going to ask. "Mom, can you bring home some of that cornbread I love?" His voice was light, cheerful, the innocence of childhood wrapped in every word. I chuckled. "You and your cornbread. All right, I'll stop by the bakery." "Thanks, Mom. Love you." "Love you too." It was such a small request, a simple errand that should have taken no more than a few minutes. I didn't know then that those few minutes would place me on a collision course with destiny. The sky had darkened by the time I left the bakery. The smell of warm, freshly baked bread filled my car, a comforting contrast to the cool air outside. I placed the bag carefully on the passenger seat and fastened my seatbelt. It had begun to drizzle, just a light mist at first, gentle and unthreatening. I had driven in the rain plenty of times before, and tonight was no different. I turned on the ignition, feeling the familiar rumble of the engine beneath me. Reaching for the radio, I tuned into my favorite gospel station, letting the soothing melody fill the car. As the rain tapped against my windshield, I found myself humming along, my mind drifting to simple, everyday thoughts. Dinner. Rest. Maybe a warm bath before bed. The road ahead was empty, stretching out into the night, slick with the fresh rain. The streetlights flickered, their glow reflecting off the wet pavement like liquid gold. Everything felt peaceful, almost dreamlike. Then, headlights. Blinding. Rushing toward me. For a split second, I couldn't process what was happening. A truck, moving too fast, its tires skidding against the rain-slicked road, was heading straight for me. The realization hit me like a jolt of electricity. My heart slammed against my chest. My pulse roared in my ears. Instinct took over, I gripped the wheel, yanking it to the right, but there was nowhere to go. The road was narrow, the guardrail too close. Time slowed, yet everything happened too fast. I barely had time to scream. The impact was violent. Metal twisted with an ear-splitting crunch. Glass exploded, tiny shards slicing through the air. My body lurched forward as my seatbelt locked, digging into my chest. The sound of the collision was deafening, a horrifying mix of screeching tires and shattering steel. For a brief moment, pain shot through my body, sharp, overwhelming, unbearable. But then, something strange happened. Everything faded. The pain disappeared. The sounds dissolved into nothingness. A weightlessness overtook me, as if I were floating, suspended between two worlds. And then, darkness. No pain. No sound. Just an eerie, endless silence. At first, I thought it was a dream. A strange, weightless dream where nothing made sense, yet everything felt more real than anything I had ever known. But then, I saw myself. My body lay motionless inside the crushed car, twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood stained my clothes, my face was pale, expressionless. The windshield was shattered, jagged shards of glass reflecting the flickering red and blue lights of the approaching ambulance. The rain continued to fall, but now, it was different, it wasn't falling in normal time. It was slow, almost frozen, each droplet hanging in the air like tiny suspended diamonds. I hovered above the wreckage, watching it all unfold as if I were an outsider looking in. I could see everything, the wreck, the road, the flashing emergency lights, the paramedics rushing toward my body, but I felt nothing. No pain. No fear. No panic. I wasn't in my body anymore. I was somewhere else, everywhere and nowhere at the same time. A strange calmness washed over me, unlike anything I had ever experienced in life. There was no weight, no heaviness pressing down on my chest. No aches, no fatigue, no stress. Just existence, Pure, effortless, and free. I wanted to move, but I had no legs, no arms, nothing physical to control. Yet, I wasn't trapped. It was as if I were floating, but not in the way one floats in water. There was no gravity, no direction, only a presence, an awareness that I was no longer bound by the physical world. Then, I saw her. My mother. She had passed away 5 years earlier, yet there she was, standing near the ambulance, watching everything with an expression of complete peace. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't mourning. She simply stood there, her presence radiating a love so deep, so profound, that I could feel it seeping into my very soul. She looked exactly as I remembered, her warm brown skin glowing, her soft eyes filled with kindness, her hands clasped gently in front of her as if waiting for me to understand. My breath, or whatever I had now, hitched. "Mom." She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Tears welled up in my eyes, though I had no physical body to cry with. Emotion overwhelmed me, not sorrow, not regret, but a deep, unexplainable longing. A longing for something I didn't quite understand yet. I wanted to run to her, to throw my arms around her, to ask her 1,000 questions. But before I could move, or even think of moving, a realization hit me. I was dead. The thought should have terrified me. I should have panicked, should have screamed, should have begged for another chance. But I didn't. Instead, a strange, indescribable understanding settled over me. The burdens of life, the deadlines, the stress, the expectations, they no longer mattered. The weight of past mistakes, of worries, of all the things I once thought were so important, gone. It was as if I had stepped outside of time itself, released from the chains of the earthly world. And then, I saw the light. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen before. It wasn't the harsh glare of headlights or the flickering red and blue of emergency vehicles. This light was alive. It pulsed, breathed, and radiated warmth in a way that made every part of me, every part of my soul, feel drawn toward it. It wasn't just in one place, it was everywhere. It surrounded me, yet it was calling me forward, as if it had been waiting for me all along. I didn't hesitate. I moved toward it, and the moment I did, I felt something even greater than peace. I felt love. Pure, boundless, overwhelming love. It was pulling me in, wrapping around me like a long-lost embrace. It seeped into every part of me, filling spaces I hadn't even known were empty. It was the kind of love that made every hurt, every fear, every doubt disappear. And then, I heard the voice. It was deep yet gentle, powerful yet filled with warmth. "Dorothy, come." And in that moment, I knew. I was going home. The light wasn't just bright, it was alive. It wasn't like the harsh glare of the sun or the artificial glow of a lamp. It wasn't something that could be measured or contained. It came from everywhere and nowhere all at once, surrounding me, engulfing me, filling every part of my being. But it wasn't just illuminating, it was embracing. It didn't just shine, it reached out, wrapping around me like the arms of a long-lost loved one. It wasn't merely light, it was love itself. A love so pure, so consuming, that it seeped into the deepest corners of my soul, washing away every fear, every sorrow, every wound I had ever carried. Then, I heard the voice. "Dorothy, come." The moment I heard it, I knew. No one needed to tell me who it was. No introduction was necessary. Deep within me, at the very core of my existence, I recognized him. Jesus. His name wasn't spoken aloud, yet it resonated through every fiber of my being. It was written in the very essence of who I was. I had never seen him before, not with my earthly eyes, but I had always known him. And now, standing on the edge of eternity, I was finally going to meet him. A rush of emotions flooded through me, but none of them were fear. There was no hesitation, no doubt, no need to question what was happening. Instead, my heart swelled with something beyond joy, beyond peace. It was as if I had spent my entire life wandering through a wilderness, searching for something I couldn't quite name, and now, at last, I had found it. It was like coming home after being lost for years. I moved toward the light effortlessly, no longer bound by the limitations of a physical body. There was no weight holding me down, no resistance keeping me in place. I wasn't walking, I wasn't floating, I was simply moving, drawn by a force greater than gravity, greater than any force I had ever known. And the closer I got, the more I felt it. Every burden I had ever carried, every regret, every pain, every disappointment, melted away like mist before the morning sun. The weight of past mistakes, of moments I wished I could change, of silent sorrows I had never spoken aloud, they were gone. It was as if they had never existed. As if they had never mattered in the first place. And then, I saw him. I fell to my knees, not out of fear, not because I was forced to, but because there was no other response. My very soul recognized who he was, and in that moment, I knew, he was everything. His presence was overwhelming. It filled every space, every thought, every part of me. There was no room for anything else, no doubt, no confusion, no pain. Only him. His eyes. Oh, his eyes. They held eternity within them. They were deep, deeper than the ocean, deeper than time itself. Looking into them, I felt utterly known, completely exposed, yet entirely accepted. Every thought I had ever had, every mistake I had ever made, every moment of my life, it was all laid bare before him. And yet, there was no condemnation. Only love. Pure, unconditional, infinite love. And yet, there was sorrow in his gaze. I didn't understand. How could there be sorrow in a place so perfect? In a presence so divine? I wanted to ask why, but before I could, he reached out his hand. And the moment his fingers touched mine, a wave of understanding washed over me. I saw everything. In an instant, I saw the world, not just as it was, but as he saw it. It was as if a veil had been lifted, as if I had been blind my entire life and only now could I see clearly. The world I had known, the world I had trusted, was nothing like what I thought it was. I saw the pain, the deep, unrelenting suffering of humanity. I saw the deception, layer upon layer of lies, carefully woven into the very fabric of society. I saw the forces at work, dark, unseen hands manipulating, distorting, controlling. And the people. They had no idea. They went about their lives, laughing, working, planning, dreaming, all while completely unaware of the war raging around them. A war not of flesh and blood, but of the soul. A war that had been waged since the beginning of time, yet most did not even know they were part of it. They do not see, Jesus said. His voice was calm, yet filled with sorrow. They do not understand what is happening. I wanted to look away. I wanted to shut my eyes, to pretend I hadn't seen what I had just seen. But I couldn't. The truth was everywhere. And then, he showed me more. I saw the rise of a system, a new order, disguising itself as progress. At first, it seemed harmless. It offered convenience, efficiency, a way to make life easier. People welcomed it with open arms, embracing it as a gift. They did not question it. They did not see it for what it truly was. A trap. Technology began to intertwine with every aspect of their existence. It was no longer just about devices, about screens, about the digital world they had created, it was about control. The lines between humanity and the system blurred, until they could no longer tell the difference between what was real and what had been programmed for them. I saw people surrendering their freedom without hesitation. At first, it was voluntary. A small device implanted under the skin, convenient, harmless, nothing to be concerned about. A way to access their bank accounts, their health records, their identification. Then, it became necessary. Without it, they could no longer function in society. They could not buy. They could not sell. They could not move freely. The system demanded compliance, and the people obeyed, because it was easier. Because it was safe. Then, it became mandatory. I saw churches embracing it, pastors encouraging their congregations to trust in the world's wisdom. I saw nations aligning, governments uniting under a single cause. I saw laws rewritten, freedoms redefined. Faith was being pushed aside, replaced with control. "This is how it begins," Jesus whispered. Tears filled my eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to warn them. I wanted to reach out and shake them, make them see what was happening. But they wouldn't hear me. They couldn't hear me. "Lord, what can I do?" I whispered. My voice trembled. My soul ached. He turned to me, his eyes filled with both love and urgency. "Tell them the truth, Dorothy." The word struck me like lightning. "Some will listen," he continued. "Some will not. But the truth must be spoken." I wanted to stay. I wanted to remain in his presence, to stay in the warmth of the light, to never leave the safety of his embrace. But I felt it. The pull. It started slowly, gently. Then, stronger. I was being pulled back. "No," I whispered. "I don't want to go." The light began to fade. The warmth, the peace, the weightlessness, it all slipped away. Pain. I gasped as it hit me, sharp and overwhelming. The sound of machines beeping. The sensation of something pressing against my chest. The weight of my body, heavy and aching. The gasping of my own breath. My eyes fluttered open. I was back. The moment my eyes fluttered open, I felt the unbearable weight of my body. The heaviness, the aching, the restriction of flesh, it was suffocating. After experiencing pure freedom in his presence, being back inside my earthly form felt like being trapped in something too small, too fragile. I gasped for air, my lungs burning, as the sharp beeping of hospital machines filled my ears. I heard muffled voices, doctors, nurses, my family sobbing in relief. I could feel their hands clutching mine, their whispers calling my name over and over. But my mind was elsewhere. My spirit was still reeling from what I had seen. The world was changing. The deception was already here. And people needed to wake up before it was too late. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I tried to tell people what had happened. I tried to explain what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me. But many dismissed it. My sister, tears in her eyes, squeezed my hand and said, "Dorothy, you went through something traumatic. Maybe it was just a vision from the accident." My pastor, though kind, looked hesitant. "Near-death experiences are powerful, Dorothy, but be careful not to cause fear. People need hope, not panic." Even my closest friends, the ones I had prayed with for years, exchanged concerned glances when I spoke. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. Not yet. But then, I started to notice something. The things I had seen in my vision, they were already happening. I turned on the news, and there it was. Reports of new implantable technology, making transactions easier. Governments pushing for a cashless society, claiming it was for security. Churches embracing artificial intelligence, welcoming it into worship as if it were divine. Everything was happening. Just as he had shown me. And suddenly, I understood why I had been sent back. I had to share the truth. Even if people doubted me. Even if they mocked me. Even if only a few would listen. Jesus had already won the battle, but people had to choose him. The enemy wasn't coming with chains and force, he was coming with convenience and comfort. He was offering solutions that seemed harmless, even helpful. And little by little, step by step, the world was surrendering. First, it would be optional. Then, it would be necessary. Finally, it would be mandatory. And by the time people realized what had happened, it would be too late. I refused to stay silent. I refused to let fear stop me. I know what I saw. I know what I was told to do. And now, I am telling you. I don't believe you found this video by accident. If you're still watching, it means one thing. You were meant to hear this. This is your wake-up call. Jesus is calling. Will you listen? The world will try to distract you. It will try to make you believe this is just another story, another prophecy that won't come true. But look around you. The signs are everywhere. Time is running out. Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice." If you feel something stirring in your spirit, don't ignore it. That is Him. Choose Him now, while you still can. Fire. If this message spoke to you, do not keep it to yourself. Fire. White heavy checkmark like this video, so that more people can find it. White heavy checkmark. Comment below, let me know if this resonates with you. White heavy checkmark. Subscribe and turn on notifications, so you don't miss what's coming next. I will keep sharing the truth, no matter what. But the choice is yours.